They thought I wouldn't survive the crush. They thought the cliff would silence me. But I crawled out bleeding, broken, and very much alive. And now they're the ones being watched. You never really expect the people you grew up feeding to come back and try to finish you off. But I should have. I should have known better. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. My name's Mike Kenner. I'm 65 years old, live alone in a small town called Ash Hollow, 2 hours outside Sacramento. I have a bad hip, a temper that's only gotten sharper with age, and a long-standing allergy to lie. I've never been a sentimental type. I don't bake cookies for neighbors or wave at cars that pass by. I keep my tools clean, my porch locked, and my past exactly where it belongs, in boxes. But when my older sister, Lorraine, got sick, there wasn't anyone else. Her kids, Gina and Blake, they were too busy grieving in advance on social media and checking Zillow listings near her property line. So I moved into the guest house, changed her sheets, cooked her meals, watched her die inch by inch with that same fire in her eyes she had when we were kids. "You're the only one I trust, Mike," she told me one night, voice like sandpaper. "They'll come for it, for all of it. But I won't let them." I didn't understand what she meant. Not until the lawyer called 2 weeks after her funeral. She left everything to me. Not just the house, the land, the savings, the vineyard contract, everything. The will was clear to my brother Mike, who stayed when no one else would, and just like that, I became the most hated man in my family. The next morning, Gina and Blake showed up uninvited, standing on the porch like vultures in designer sunglasses. "You've got some nerve," Gina said. I sipped my coffee. "And you've got some nerve showing up in heels on gravel. What do you want?" She forced a smile. "You know this isn't fair. Life isn't." Lorraine knew that. "Now get off my property." Blake didn't say a word. Just stood there, jaw clenched, eyes flicking to the barn, the house, the hills, measuring it all, like it already belonged to him. I shut the door in their faces. That should have been the end of it. But I'd forgotten one thing. Entitlement is a disease. And those two were infected beyond saving. It happened 3 nights later. I was driving back from town, late run to the hardware store. Winding up Old Mill Road like I've done 100 times. The curve was sharp. The guardrail was old. And when my front left tire blew, it all went sideways fast. Truck spun. Crashed through the barrier. Flipped once. Slammed against a tree halfway down the ravine. I woke up to smoke, blood, and the sound of insects. No headlights. No horns. No cell signal. Just silence. And pain. My ribs were broken. Right leg crushed under the dash. And worst of all, the brake line had been cut. Not frayed. Not worn. Sliced. That was no accident. It took me 2 hours to crawl up that hill. Another hour to wave down a passing trucker. By the time I got to the I was barely conscious. But my brain was wide awake. Someone had tried to kill me. And I didn't need a badge to figure out who. The cops did their dance. Could be coincidence. The mechanic did his. Strange damage pattern. I nodded through it all. Let them believe I was slow. Shaken. Weak. But inside, something lit up. Not fear. Not grief. Focus. I started documenting everything from the hospital bed, Gina's fake tears at the funeral, Blake's sudden interest in local real estate attorneys, a voicemail I never deleted, where Gina said, "You don't deserve what she gave you," and then there was the footage. Turns out the old barn had a working security cam I'd forgotten to disconnect. It caught a shadowy figure in the driveway the night before the crash, right next to my truck, holding a flashlight. They thought they buried me in that ravine. But I'm not the kind of man you bury. I'm the kind who claws his way out and digs graves of his own. I didn't call the cops. Not yet. See, I've learned something about people like Gina and Blake. They're only brave when they think you're weak. They like control, predictability, victims who play by the rules. I wasn't going to play their game. I was going to flip the board. While I was stuck in that hospital bed with my leg in a brace and ribs wrapped tighter than a Christmas ham, I started planning. And the first thing I needed was information. I had Gina's voicemail, the surveillance footage, But it wasn't enough. It proved someone was near the truck, not what they did. And with Blake's smug poker face, I knew they'd lie without blinking. So I made some calls. There's a guy named Clay I used to work with at the County Fleet Services back in the 90s. He owed me a favor from a DUI I helped cover up. I asked him to quietly get me the service records on Gina's car. 2 days later, I had them. Turns out, she had her car in the shop that same night for brake line replacement. Sloppy. I smiled through the pain. The second step was cleaning the barn camera footage. The file was grainy and dark, but I uploaded it to a contact I had in Oakland, retired AV engineer who used to clean up police audio for appeals cases. He owed me a poker debt from 2006. That's the good thing about living long enough. People rack up favors they hope you forget. 3 days later, he sent it back enhanced. There was no mistaking the figure. It was Blake, wearing a hoodie, holding bolt cutters, flashlight tucked under his arm. And in the background, barely audible, his voice on a phone call. She's dead. It's just the old man now. He can't fight this. I watched that clip over and over again until it stopped feeling real. Then I saved it to 3 flash drives. One for my lawyer, one for the bank safe, one to mail anonymously later when the time came. Revenge is like building a house. Start with the foundation. And mine was finally solid. When I got out of the hospital, I didn't go home. I stayed at a small motel on the edge of town. Cash only. No cameras. Just long enough to heal without being watched. I let them think I was recovering somewhere else. Maybe with friends. Maybe in a facility. Let them relax. Get sloppy. Let them think the plan had worked. And then I started making visits. First was to Lorraine's attorney. I told him I wanted to review the will. The original one. Not the one they got at the reading. He pulled it from his file cabinet, handed it to me, and I noticed something. The witness signatures had been updated. Recently. Too recently. One of them was Blake's high school friend, a real estate agent. The other? A notary I hadn't heard of before. Certified only 6 months prior. I looked the lawyer in the eye. Did you see Lorraine sign this yourself? He hesitated. Well, not this version, no. She had us update a few sections near the end. She said you were aware, Dash. She didn't update a damn thing, I snapped. I took a photo of the last page and walked out. If they'd forged the revision, it would explain everything. They were trying to paint me as temporary, disposable, a stepping stone to the inheritance they thought was theirs by birthright. But now I had something stronger than anger. Motive. Forgery. Attempted murder. Fraud. It was enough to bury both of them legally and publicly. But I wasn't done. I went home that night, quiet as fog. The house was just as I left it. They hadn't dared move in. But I could feel their fingerprints on the windows, on the walls. Like ghosts of betrayal, still lingering. I went to the shed and pulled out Lorraine's lockbox. Inside were the letters she wrote in her final weeks, and one of them was addressed to me. In it, she wrote, "If they try anything, don't go soft. You were always the strong one, Mike. You stay mean. That's what keeps them honest." That letter was all I needed. It reminded me I wasn't just fighting for a house or money. I was fighting for the only person who'd ever believed I was more than a broken man in work boots. I spent the next few days setting traps. Not literal ones, psychological. I let Blake know, through a mutual friend, that I'd decided to sign the place over to them. I told him I wanted to be free of the burden. I dropped hints. Let him think the pressure worked. And when he showed up on my doorstep with a bottle of cheap whiskey and a grin too wide for his face, I opened the door just enough. "You were right," I said. "I'm too old for this fight." He nodded slowly, trying not to show the glee. "I'm glad you came to your senses, Uncle Mike." "I just want peace," I said. "But first, I want to make things official. Can we meet with your notary friend tomorrow? Just to update the deed." "Of course," he said, already picturing himself on the title. They'd taken the bait. But what he didn't know, the notary would be fake. The pen would be a camera. And the whole thing, the setup, the conversation, the signing would be recorded for the authorities and the press. I wasn't going to kill them. But I was going to make sure they never walked into another room without people knowing what they did. They tried to put me in the ground. Now it was their names I was burying. It was just after 9 a.m. when Blake and Gina arrived the next day. He wore a blazer, like some discount real estate agent. She had on a white blouse with shoulder pads and enough perfume to choke a bowl. They brought coffee, smiling, laughing, like the crash never happened. Like I was just some tired old man who finally came around. I opened the door in silence. Let them in. The kitchen smelled like fresh lemon oil. I'd cleaned everything down to the tiles. They thought it was for them. A nice gesture before handing over the keys. It was for me. A kind of funeral, just not mine. The notary sat at the table. His name was Greg, a retired stage actor I met through a veterans outreach program in Sacramento. He had the papers, the stamps, the poker face. I introduced him. This is Greg Halperin, certified notary public. Greg nodded and didn't smile. They didn't recognize him. Good. They weren't locals. They'd only ever visited Lorraine when she was dying, and the smell of inheritance was in the air. Saturday, I pulled out a fresh deed transfer, real on paper, but useless legally. No registration. Just a decoy. Greg walked them through the process. Mike will sign here, here, and initial here. You both as beneficiaries will acknowledge, and then I'll stamp it. It was all so smooth. Too smooth. They didn't ask questions. Didn't read the fine print. That was the kind of arrogance I'd counted on. Gina said, "This is such a relief, Mike." I know how hard this must be. I looked at her. Oh, it's hard. But not in the way you think. She blinked. I signed. Slowly. Deliberately. Blake reached for the document the second I finished. Couldn't help himself. Hungry hands. Greedy eyes. And that's when I said it. You'll want to keep that copy. It'll be the last thing you ever hold with your name on his property. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Greg stood up. Took off the notary badge. Pulled a small body cam from his shirt pocket. Hit stop. Means you've just confessed to orchestrating a fraudulent deed transfer in the home of the legal inheritor. On video. With pre-printed documentation you both accepted without question. Which, in California, is enough for a fraud indictment. Their smiles dropped. You think you're clever? Blake snapped, standing. No, I know I am, I said. Clever enough to crawl out of a ravine with a shattered leg. Clever enough to find a working barn camera. Clever enough to bait two amateurs into playing grown-up criminal without a single alibi. You can't prove anything, Gina said. This is illegal entrapment. Actually, Greg cut in. He didn't entrap you. He offered to sign. You chose to accept a fraudulent version without a lawyer present. That's not entrapment. That's greed with his signature. They both stood now. Flustered. Pale. I walked over to the cabinet. Pulled out a flash drive. Tossed it on the table. Here's footage of you, Blake, near my truck the night before the crash. Enhanced audio and time-stamped. The same drive's already with a lawyer, and another copy went to the sheriff this morning. Blake stepped forward like he was going to say something tough. I didn't flinch. You want to swing, boy? I asked quietly. Go ahead. But if you touch me, that's assault on a disabled veteran, and I swear to God, I'll watch you rot behind bars. He froze. Gina grabbed his arm. We're leaving, I nodded. Good idea. As they turned, I added, oh, and that coffee you brought? I wouldn't drink it if I were you. Let's just say, I know how far you're willing to go. They left it on the counter. It sat there all day. I never touched it. Just stared at it like a loaded gun someone left behind. I called Greg that evening to thank him. You ever done anything like this before? I asked. No, he said. But I'd do it again. You did damn good. No, Mike. You did. They'll think twice before crossing a man who keeps receipts. The next day, the sheriff's office called. They'd received the flash drive and were opening a formal case. I didn't have to press charges. The evidence spoke loud enough. Between the doctored will, the break line, the fraudulent deed attempt, it was more than enough. They were about to learn what justice feels like when it's served slow and cold. I walked back into the house and looked around. It felt different now. Not cleaner. Just reclaimed. I turned on the old stereo, played one of Lorraine's favorite vinyls. Something soft. Something peaceful. I sat at the table with a mug of black coffee, the real kind, and stared out the window toward the hills. They tried to take everything she left me. But now? Now I was the last man standing. And every inch of this land knew my name. The thing about small towns is nothing stays quiet for long. By the end of the week, the whole county knew about Blake and Gina. Not because I told anyone. I didn't need to. Word spreads on its own when the story's got blood, betrayal, and a failed murder attempt baked into it. The sheriff's office hadn't made an arrest yet. They were gathering more and consulting with the DA, but I knew how that game worked. They were biding time, waiting to see if someone cracked. And someone did. His name was Ryan Miller, a mechanic who worked nights at a shop over in Clear Lake. Turns out, Blake paid him under the table to tamper with my truck. Ryan was 24, broke, and didn't ask questions. But now, with the heat on, he was scared. And scared men talk. He walked into the station and confessed everything. Said Blake told him I wouldn't survive the accident and that he'd make it worth his while if the truck had an unexpected malfunction. Even gave him cash, $5,000 and an envelope labeled RV payment. He turned over texts too. The Duck called me personally that night. Mr. Kenner, we're moving forward with charges. Conspiracy to commit murder, attempted manslaughter, will fraud, and grand larceny. It's going to be a circus. Good, I said. Let the cameras roll, but before I hung up, I asked, what about Gina? She's not named in the tampering, but we're still reviewing her role in the forged documents. She's not innocent, I said flatly. We'll prove it. I stared out the window a long time after that call. The hills were dark, moonlight crawling over them like cold water. Somewhere out there, Lorraine was buried. I hadn't visited her grave since the funeral, but now it felt like time. I drove out the next morning. No music, no stops, just me and the silence. The cemetery was empty when I arrived. Still, dry, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own breath. I stood at her grave for a while, said nothing. Then, finally, it's handled, Lorraine. You can rest. I left a dog tag I used to wear back in the 70s. Bent and worn. She'd always called it my armor. I figured she could use it more now than I could. When I got back home, there was a letter on my porch. No return address. Handwritten. Slanted, rushed penmanship. Inside, one sentence. You think this is over, but you just woke up the rest of us. No signature. Just a smear of something greasy in the corner of the paper. At first, I thought it was some sick joke. Or Blake being dramatic. But then I remembered something Greg told me after our little sting. People like that? They never act alone. They always have enablers. People who feed off the same rotten root. So I checked the barn cam again. The night of the brake sabotage. There was a second figure in the shadows. Watching. Not moving. Just standing there. Too far to see clearly, but clearly there. And I realized someone else had known, maybe even helped, which meant I had more work to do. I pulled out Lorraine's old address book, started going through every name, her friends, her church circle, her bridge club, anyone who'd had access to the house, the property, or the documents. And one name kept coming up, Daryl Skinner, old family friend, used to handle their taxes. Gina once called him her second father. He was quiet at the funeral. Too quiet. The kind of silence that looks like grief, but smells like guilt. I paid him a visit. Daryl lived in a big white ranch house outside town. Horses. Big truck in the driveway. Nice place. Too nice for a retired bookkeeper. He opened the door, surprised. Fake smile. Invited me in. I was just about to make coffee, he said. I'll pass, I said. I'm not here for pleasantries. His face tightened. What's this about, Mike? Let's skip the dance. You notarized the last revision of Lorraine's will. That's right. Problem is, the date on that document is the same day Lorraine was in hospice, unconscious. She couldn't speak, let alone sign anything. He froze. Care to explain? I was told it was pre-signed. That she gave permission earlier, by who? He swallowed hard. Gina, of course. I didn't know it was fake, he added quickly. You didn't ask. He said nothing. You're lucky I don't tape conversations the way I used to, I said. But I'm sure the sheriff would love to hear how someone with a notary license signed off on a dying woman's estate, sight unseen. He tried to recover. Mike, please. I didn't think dash, that's the problem. You didn't think. You enabled it. And now you're in this mess just like them. He stepped back. What do you want? I want your signature, I said. A statement admitting you never saw Lorraine sign, that you acted on verbal guidance, that you can't confirm the authenticity of the document. He hesitated. I leaned in. Or I go public. And the words fraudulent notary, follow your name until the day they bury you, he signed. I left with that paper in my pocket and a storm in my chest. They thought they could surround me with lies and make me question reality. But all they'd done was give me fuel. And I was just getting warm. I've never liked the idea of revenge. Too theatrical, too emotional. But justice, the slow, deliberate kind that I can live with. And I was finally close. With Daryl's signed statement in hand and Ryan's confession already at the sheriff's office, the foundation of their little scheme was crumbling. Blake was going down hard. Gina wasn't far behind. But I wasn't after prison alone. I wanted humiliation. Not out of cruelty. Out of principle. They tried to erase my name. Steal my sister's legacy. Break my spine on a hillside and pretend they'd earned their inheritance through grief. So I planned a funeral of my own. Not with flowers. With headlines. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. It started with a package, anonymous, carefully crafted, mailed to a reporter I trusted, Claire Benton. She ran a weekly investigative column out of Sacramento. Tough as nails. No patience for smoke or mirrors. She once tore down a real estate developer for displacing veterans and did it with nothing more than spreadsheets and 3 interviews. I sent her Blake's break tampering footage, the enhanced barn camera video screenshots of the forged will the signed confession from Daryl, and the you just woke up the rest of us, letter no return address. Just a note. The will was forged. The crash was planned. I'm alive. But for how long? It didn't take long. 2 days later, she called my landline. Didn't ask if I was the source, she knew. I've seen some dirty family fights, she said. But this is biblical. Are you running it? I asked. You bet you're bitter, limping as I am, and she did. The story dropped that Sunday. Front page, full column. With photos, quotes from the sheriff, and one brutal headline, Murder for the Money, the inheritance scheme that failed to kill. It exploded. TV stations picked it up. Twitter caught fire. Gina shut down her accounts within hours. Blake's photo, once plastered across job recruitment ads, was now under the banner, wanted for attempted manslaughter. But the best part? The editorial Claire ran beneath the main article. It was short, ruthless, beautiful. In a time when the elderly are discarded and silenced, one man proved that legacy can't be stolen, not by family, not by greed, not by violence. He rose from a ditch, stood on a broken leg, and said, "You're going to remember my name." His name is Mike Kenner. And now the world knows it. I didn't cry when I read it. But something settled in me. Something I didn't know I'd been carrying. Maybe pride. Maybe peace. Or maybe the simple weight of finally being seen. The sheriff's office issued a warrant for Blake's arrest within 24 hours of publication. He ran. Of course he ran. Cowards like him always do. But he didn't get far. He was picked up at a gas station in Oregon trying to pay for snacks with a card flagged for fraud. They extradited him back to California. Charged him formally. No bail. When they walked him into the courthouse, he looked smaller. Not just physically. His whole presence had shrunk. No bravado. No fire. Just a spoiled child in a suit 2 sizes too big. I didn't attend the arraignment. Didn't need to. But I sent Claire a note. Let me know if he cries. I'm betting he does by the second charge. She replied, first charge. Lost it completely. Good call. I smiled for the first time in weeks. As for Gina, she didn't go to jail. Not yet. But the court forced her into civil litigation. And with the evidence I had, the judge froze every account tied to her name. She couldn't sell, transfer, or access a dime of what she thought she'd inherit. She sent me a letter. 4 pages. Handwritten. Full of apologies, excuses, and just enough guilt to make it look sincere. I didn't read past page 1. I burned it in the fireplace. Then I took Lorraine's old locket, the one Gina used to beg for, and locked it in the top drawer of my desk. It wasn't hers. Not anymore. Not ever. I spent the following days cleaning out the house, room by room, decades of dust and memory. Found photos I forgot we had. A birthday card from Lorraine with the words, "Keep being stubborn. It's your best trait." I hung that one on the fridge. The town quieted down slowly. People nodded at me in the grocery store. Strangers thanked me at the post office. I wasn't used to the attention. Didn't want it. But it felt good to know I was no longer just some crank in a flannel shirt who grunted at the register. They knew who I was now. They knew what I'd survived. And they knew, more than anything, that I wouldn't go down easy. It had been 4 weeks since the story dropped. 3 weeks since Blake was dragged into court in handcuffs. And 2 weeks since Gina's attorney tried to negotiate a quiet settlement. They offered me $400,000 if I'd withdraw my civil suit and sign a non-disclosure agreement. I laughed so hard I nearly cracked another rib. I wrote 2 words on the return envelope: keep dreaming. See, what they still didn't get, even after everything, was that this was never about money. It was about name, about principle, about standing in the damn fire when others run for the exits. Lorraine once told me that legacy isn't what you leave in your will, it's what people say about you after the dust settles. Well, the dust had settled now, and I was still standing. But it wasn't over, because then came the foundation. A small, sleek envelope appeared in my mailbox one morning. No stamp, no return address, just one embossed logo in the corner, a golden olive branch inside a circle. I knew that mark. Lorraine had told me about them. The Blake Lorraine Memorial Fund, a nonprofit Gina had helped form years ago, supposedly for community development, in reality, a slush pile for tax breaks, vanity projects, and family name laundering. Inside the envelope was a letter, polite, official, and soaked in false respect. Dear Mr. Kenner, in light of recent public misinterpretations, we would appreciate an opportunity to clarify the goals and historical integrity of the Foundation. As a former family stakeholder, your cooperation in preserving our reputation would be greatly appreciated. In return, we are prepared to offer a formal apology, a plaque in your honor, and a silent retraction of any contested documents. Respectfully, the Board of Trustees. A plaque? They erased me from history, tried to kill me, forged my sister's will, and now they wanted to trade a chunk of engraved metal for silence? I didn't respond. Instead, I called Claire. Tell me what you know about the Blake Lorraine Memorial Fund. She didn't even hesitate. They're dirty. Shell organizations, offshore transactions, double billing on grant projects. I've been trying to get access to their internal ledgers for years. I told her about the letter. She whistled. That means they're scared. Scared you're about to blow the lid off. Are we? Hell yes, she said. We just need someone on the inside. That's when it clicked. Ryan, the mechanic, had mentioned someone else had paid him before. Someone who represented a charitable fund. At the time, I'd thought he was bluffing. But now, I had a trail. We dug into the Foundation's filings. Claire pulled IRS records, nonprofit disclosures, staff rosters. I looked at names, dates, travel logs, and there it was. A payment from the Foundation, consulting expenses issued 2 weeks before my crush. Signed off by none other than Daryl Skinner. Not just a notary, a board member. The man who signed off on the fake will had also signed off on a consulting payment to the man who tampered with my brakes. That was conspiracy. On paper, traceable, actionable. We took it all, the financials, the internal memos, the timeline, and dropped it into the lap of the Attorney General's office. Claire published a second expose the next day. Nonprofit, dirty money, and a failed murder. The rot inside a family foundation. This time, it went national. The Foundation was suspended. Daryl was subpoenaed. Gina vanished from the public eye completely. And I went back to the cemetery. I stood at Lorraine's grave and told her what I'd done. How it didn't stop with Blake. How I followed the trail to the rot beneath the marble. How they tried to put a plaque on my grave, before I was even in it. And how I chose to put their names in the ground instead. I left her favorite book on the stone, To Kill a Mockingbird. She always said justice wasn't about grand speeches. It was about patience, quiet fury, a slow fuse. I lit the match, and now they were the ones burning. When I walked back to the truck, I didn't limp. I'd healed, not just the bones. The part of me they tried to break, the belief that truth still has weight, that legacy matters, that even an old man with nothing left can still drag down giants with him if he fights smart. And I was still fighting, still standing, and their names were still falling. I don't go looking for revenge, but I sure as hell know how to finish it. 3 weeks after Claire's second exposé, the California Attorney General's office opened a formal investigation into the Blake Lorraine Memorial Fund. The feds joined in 2 days later. Turns out, the fake nonprofit had funneled close to $1 for million over 5 years into private accounts, ghost construction projects, and a charity event that, according to photos, served steaks to donors while homeless shelters down the street went unfunded. And every one of those documents had Daryl Skinner's initials in the margins. By the time they raided the foundation's office, Daryl was already lawyering up. He issued a statement through his attorney, gravely misinformed, deeply saddened, victim of manipulation. Typical. They all play the same tune when the lights come on. Gina was subpoenaed next. She tried to fight it, then filed for a mental health deferment. Her attorney begged for privacy. The media didn't care. Neither did I. I wasn't looking for apologies anymore. I was after exposure. I wanted their names tarnished, their deals burned, their masks ripped off in front of the very people they'd fooled for years. And it was working. The town that once whispered about the cranky old man who lived up on the hill now looked me in the eye. Some apologized. Others just nodded. But none of them looked through me anymore. They saw me now, and they saw what I'd done. I got a call from the sheriff himself. "You want to come down and sit in on the arraignment hearings?" "No," I said, "but I want you to read something in court." He hesitated. "Go on." So I sent him a letter. Handwritten. Short. "Your Honor, when they tried to take what was mine, I stood up. When they tried to erase me, I wrote it back in stone. When they tried to bury me, I brought the whole damn hill down with me. Some things aren't about revenge. Some things are about respect. I want every man and woman in this courtroom to understand, you don't get to rewrite someone's life just because they're old, quiet, or inconvenient. My name is Mike Kenner, and I'm not going anywhere." He read it. Word for word. On record. Claire sent me the video clip. I watched it once, then saved it to a hard drive and tucked it in a drawer next to my sister's will, the real one. That night, I sat out on the porch, just like always. The wind was cool, sky clear. One of those rare California nights where everything's still, like the land itself is listening. Emily showed up around 9 p.m., my niece, Gina's daughter. I hadn't seen her since the funeral. She parked her dusty hatchback near the gate and walked up slow. No makeup, no fake smile. Just her, looking tired and 20 years older than she was. "I'm not here to fight," she said. "Good. You'd lose." She managed a sad smile. "I came to say I didn't know. About any of it, I didn't answer. I've cut contact with Mom. She lied to all of us. I was a kid when she started poisoning me against you. Telling stories about how you used to hit her. How you manipulated Grandma. Said you were dangerous." My hands tightened on the armrests. "That woman can lie in her sleep," I muttered. Emily nodded. "I didn't come to ask forgiveness. Just to say I see it now. All of it. And I'm sorry." Silence hung between us for a minute. Then I stood. "Come inside. I'll make coffee." She followed. And just like that, something shifted. Not everything. Not trust. Not yet. But a start. Later that night, I opened Lorraine's old photo album, the one I hadn't touched in years. Emily sat across from me, flipping through pages of birthdays, holidays, dusty summers by the lake. She stopped at one picture. Her as a child on my shoulders, both of us covered in mud. "I don't remember this," she said. "I do," I said. "You fell in the creek. I hauled you out and told your mom you saved a kitten. She grounded you anyway. She laughed. Not a big laugh, but real. And that's when I realized something. My fight had never been about the will, not the land, not even a legacy. It was about the people they tried to turn against me, the lies they used to fill the gaps where memory should have been, the stories they told to make me a villain in the family I helped build. And now the truth was louder than their version ever was, because I'd lived it. I'd bled for it. And no court, no fake notary, no failed murder plot could take that away. 2 months after the indictment, the trial began. They tried to delay it. Gina's lawyers asked for an extension. Blake's new team filed a motion to sever the cases. Daryl pled the fifth more times than I could count. Didn't matter. The state had more than enough. Paper trails, video footage, eyewitnesses, audio, financial records. All roads led straight to them. I didn't sit in the courtroom every day. Just once, the day Blake took the stand. I sat in the back, unnoticed at first. His hair was longer. His suit hung off him like it didn't belong. Gone was the slick boy who stood on my porch with a fake smile and a bottle of whiskey. The man I saw now was hollow. And still, even after everything, he tried to spin it. Said I was unstable. Said Lorraine's will was unclear. Claimed he was trying to protect the family estate from confusion. Called the attempted deed transfer a miscommunication. He didn't even mention the crush. Didn't have to. The prosecution did it for him. Played the enhanced bar and cam on the big screen. Froze the frame on his face. Played the audio. She's dead. It's just the old man now. He can't fight this. He looked down when it played. Didn't say a word. Couldn't. That was the moment the jury locked in their verdict, even if it would take days for the official reading. When I stood to leave, Blake finally saw me, and for the first time in his life, he looked ashamed. I didn't smile, didn't nod, just walked out and let the courtroom door close behind me. By the time the trial ended, here's how it shook out. Blake, convicted on conspiracy, attempted manslaughter, and forgery. 10 years minimum. No parole for the first 6. Gina, charged with conspiracy and document fraud. She struck a deal. No prison, but stripped of any inheritance rights, hit with a massive fine, and permanently barred from serving on any board or foundation. Daryl, facing state and federal charges for financial misconduct. Likely to lose everything, including the house and pension he earned falsifying signatures. They tried to kill me quietly. I buried them publicly. Not out of spite, out of duty. There's something sacred about the truth, especially when you're the only one left who remembers it right. And now the world remembered it too. The land stayed mine. The vineyard contract still active. The taxes paid up. I donated part of the estate to a local veterans group. Set up a scholarship in Lorraine's name, not through a flashy foundation, just direct help to kids who needed it. The press moved on eventually. So did the headlines. But the people in this town didn't forget. They'd nod now, shake my hand. Some even asked me to speak at community meetings. I declined most. I'm no public figure. I'm a man who got pushed too far and decided not to stay down. That's all. One morning, Emily came by with a box of old books she found in Gina's attic. Said some belonged to Lorraine. I flipped through them slowly, yellowed pages, folded corners, scribbles in the margins. One had a note tucked inside. My sister's handwriting. It read, "If you're reading this, Mike, you were right. About them. About everything. I left it to you because I knew you wouldn't fold. I just wish I'd said it to your face. Thank you for staying when no one else did." I closed the book, set it on the shelf, stared out the window at the hills she used to love. Wind blowing through the dry grass. Crows circling above the oaks. Sun rising without apology. It felt like peace. Not perfect. Not painless. But earned. They thought they could steal what was mine. Rewrite my name. Break my bones and bury the rest. But I wasn't dead. And I sure as hell wasn't forgotten. I was still here. Still watching. Still walking the same damn land they tried to take. And now? Now they were just footnotes in a story they never got to finish. They put me in the will. Then they tried to bury me. But I don't die easy. I get even. And I don't miss.